What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at The Ghost of Frankenstein, the fourth installment into the Frankenstein movie franchise. Now, The Ghost of Frankenstein is this. A mad scientist pretty much conspires with Igor to transplant his brain into the Frankenstein monster. That's pretty much the overall basic premise of the movie. Let's talk about it. Now, Ghost of Frankenstein is a follow up of Son of Frankenstein, picking up exactly where that movie left off. Igor is still alive, and he still has the monster after finding him in the sulfur pit where he was last seen. And this time around, the monster is played by Lon Chaney Jr. So, I think overall, this movie is okay. It's really compared to the first three movies. This is the weakest of the bunch. I think this movie is boring in a lot of areas. I don't think it's any exciting. And when the movie actually starts to get interesting, it ends. It ends. You save the most interesting part of the movie for the last 7 minutes of the movie, and just as this movie's and it should happen way earlier than it actually did. This movie is so sloppy to me. I mean, it has good elements and interesting ideas, but the execution is just sloppily done. So, let's just say this. Acting wise, this movie does have a really good cast. Bela Lugosi returns as Igor, and he's just as manipulative and is just as much as a douche as he was in the last movie. He's fantastic in the role. And when Igor gets his brain transplanted into the monster, it's a cool, creative idea, and it's fun seeing Chaney pretty much mimic Bela Lugosi's Igor performance as the monster. That's fun to see, and hearing Lugosi do voiceover work coming out of the monster. That's also pretty cool to see. But again, it happens way too late in the movie. It should have happened sooner. Uh, this movie also stars Sir Cedric Hardwicke, who plays Ludwig Frankenstein, another son of Henry Frankenstein. He's the scientist that wants to do this a brain transplant to kind of restore the family name, but he wants to do it with a good brain. Instead, this mad scientist doctor, played by Lionel Atwill, switches the brains with Igor's brain. Lionel Atwill's in this movie. He was in the last movie as a cop. They bring him back for this movie as a mad scientist. To me, this scientist adds absolutely nothing to the story. How I would have done it, I would have brought back the inspector character, and I would have had Igor pretty much threaten the life of Ludwig's daughter to get the brain transplant instead of having this other doctor be a rival scientist. I don't think it adds anything. It adds absolutely nothing, to me, it diminishes the stakes. I think the stakes would have been much higher since we already established that Igor is a diabolical person who will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Why not threaten the man with causing harm to his child? You know, I think Evelyn Ankers, who plays Elsa, she's kind of wasted in the role because she doesn't really do much. Ralph Bellamy's in this movie as well. Ralph Bellamy was in The Wolfman. He plays the love interest to Elsa. They're okay together on screen, but his character doesn't really add much to the overall movie. I think his character would have meant more if he had the inspector character, because it's already established that the Ralph Bellamy character is involved with law enforcement, I think. So him having a partnership with Krug would have added much more depth to his character as well, and he would have had more of a personal stake in it because his girlfriend essentially is being threatened with harm by Igor just to get a brain transplant. And Bellamy and the Bellamy character could have easily went to the inspector character if this character was in this movie, which he's not. That's why this movie to me is just not good. It's not a bad movie per se. It does have some cool things in it that I actually did enjoy. It does have some overall solid performances, but the story is really, really, really weak. And like I said, it takes forever for it to just pick up steam. And by the time this movie starts to get interesting, it ends. And it ends just haphazardly. I didn't like it at all. But going back to the cast, like I said, for as an acting performance wise, Harvard did a good job as Ludwig Frankenstein. Even though I think the mad scientist character it was not necessary, Lionel Atwill turns in a good performance, and even though Bellamy and Ankers are not really factors in the plot, they do pretty good for themselves as well. So, like, from a casting standpoint, the cast does well. From a story standpoint, as I illustrated, the story doesn't have anything going for it. But does it have some good moments to it? Yes, it does. There's actually this nice little subplot where the Frankenstein monster forms a bond with this little girl from the town village, and at the end of the movie, it's this little girl's brain that the monster wants. I like that little thing that happens, and the scene between them is both nicely shot, and it's a mix of being terrifying and innocent all at once. Because you think you're gonna get a repeat of the first movie where the monster accidentally killed that little girl, but in this movie the monster does not kill the little girl. He ends up bringing the little girl back to her parents. So I like all this stuff, and I thought Lon Chaney's performance in this scene was actually really good. You know, it tries to match the pathos and misunderstood nature of the Karloff monster before you get to before this movie continues, and the monster is just reduced to merely a background character like he was in the Son of Frankenstein. It's almost as if they just don't want to use the Frankenstein monster too much anymore because he's not really doing much within the last two movies. And like I said, again, I reiterate, when the monster is finally ready to do something interesting, the movie ends just as it does it. I would have had Igor's brain being transplanted 30 minutes before the climax of the movie, so therefore we get more time as Igor on the monster and see him terrorize the town with this new wicked evil personality. That would have made for a much more entertaining movie, and you could have still done the climax you already have. It just would have had more of a personal stake to it. It would have had more of a emotional. It would have had more value to it instead of it's just diminished. You know, at the end, the brain transplant happens, and you realize that the Igor's blood does not match the monster's blood. Therefore, the monster goes blind, and he kills the doctor by throwing him into an electrical apparatus. And then Ludwig pretty much dies from being mortally wounded by the monster. And then the house just burns down, and that's how the movie ends. It's kind of underwhelming, to be honest with you. So yeah, I didn't really care for The Ghost of Frankenstein. Like I said, it's not a bad movie per se. It does have some good elements to it. I mean, overall, it's well directed. The cinematography looks fine. The production value is all good. But the story for this movie is just not engaging, and it's just not interesting, and it takes way too long to get to the good stuff. I'm sorry, but to me, The Ghost of Frankenstein is going to get a... I'm going to be generous, and I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It's very weak compared to the first three movies, but it's not bad in the sense of this movie being garbage. It's just entertaining, but it could have been so much more and so much better. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Ghost of Frankenstein. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.